We're living in extraordinary times. No matter what you think normal used to be, it's gone now. There is no new normal. Yet. Maybe there never will be. But what happened? How did we get here? Well, the story might go something like this. Not too long ago, mankind was in a singular timeline, a very dire and destructive path. All positions of importance and power had been compromised. All major aspects of finance, politics, science, religion, education, and other important fields were under the control of a small group of entities, commonly referred to as the elites and later identified as a cabal. Their singular goal was to form a central world government and a one-world currency, and lead all women, men, and children into a new dystopian future with 24/7 surveillance, a new AI-centric religion, and strict rules and regulations that were to be imposed and maintained through a social credit system. Everything was to be digital and controllable through a central command governed 100% by AI, artificial intelligence. The cabal had successfully put their people in key positions of all essential structures: the military, governments, high finance, education, science, medicine, defense. They had acquired and developed technologies many decades or even centuries ahead of what was shown to the public, and used these technologies to steer mankind in their desired direction. Part of their ultimate plan was to reduce the world population drastically in order to more easily control the rest that was to be mainly a servant race, artificially enhanced and moved to fully automated megacities. They were highly organized and seemed all-powerful. They controlled perceived democracies and claimed ownership over everything on Earth. Mankind was in a singular timeline, and it seemed as though nothing could be done about it. Within the ranks of government, the military, and the private sector, however, something extraordinary began to happen. A growing number of people within these structures experienced strange things and began to question the path they were on and the path mankind was on. Like a growing group of people in the civilian world, they started seeing bigger patterns, connected the dots, and had spiritual epiphanies. Truth began to emerge within them and help them to see more clearly. Pretty soon, this group of people began connecting with each other, realizing that something needed to happen, something drastic. Mankind itself was at stake. From here on out, we shall call them the initiators. The initiators began forming a plan, but it wasn't just any plan. It was the grandmother of all plans. At the center, at the very core, was the idea to assist mankind in the most important and significant process of our times, today known as the Great Awakening. Their goal was simple. The execution was not. What began was the most complex and sophisticated operation ever conducted. Unlike other undertakings, this operation wasn't linear in its timing. It actually operated outside of our perception of time, reaching forward, backward, and into all other aspects of time. It required controlled, open, and hidden opposition. All conceivable possibilities were included, and a plethora of strategies were deployed simultaneously. Once the plan was in motion, communication among the orchestrators were minimal and highly encoded and encrypted. Players were positioned and activated, agents and non-agents deployed, and sleepers, meaning people who have been prepared and trained for future operations, were activated. But this plan wasn't military in its nature. It was actually a spiritual plan, using all methods known and unknown to the public today. Loss, suffering, chaos, and even destruction were included in the calculations. After a period of time, essential structures and positions had been overtaken by the initiators. Contrary to the belief and strategy of their opponents, the cabal, the initiators did not seize control for power's sake. Their strategy was vastly different. They played by a different set of rules, the universal laws, and knew they couldn't change timelines by themselves. Their aim, their goal, their vision was entirely different. They needed the people to regain power over themselves and ultimately take back power and control of all essential structures on Earth. Their plan was to inspire the people to become aware of their own power again. They couldn't simply take over and tell the people what had been going on Earth for centuries and possibly millennia. They couldn't simply unplug the Matrix. The people had to see, had to feel, had to hear the truth themselves. They had to discover it on their own. So the initiators created a somewhat controlled environment in which they allowed for aspects of their opponents' plans to play out. They made sure that more and more of the Cabal's true motives and goals would be revealed. The initiators knew that the more people were awakening to the truth, the more truth would become visible. They understood the universal laws and worked with them rather than against them. They also knew that they themselves could not fundamentally change what was going to happen. It had to be the people who would make the changes. The initiators infiltrated all parties, all movements, whether they were for or against their plans. They made sure the truth became visible. Mankind all across the earth slowly began to awaken. With every wave of newly awakened people, more energy was inserted into the plan. It was fluent, dynamic, interdimensional, and no one person will ever fully grasp the full picture of it, including the initiators themselves. The effects of the operation began to reach so many people that gradually a new timeline began to form. This, as it became clearer and clearer, wasn't a new timeline, it was mankind's original timeline. A timeline of freedom, spiritual maturity, harmony, and unity. It was the divinely inspired timeline. As this timeline emerged, radical shifts began to happen. Portals began to open and the transformational stage of the plan had started. This also presented the most dangerous part of the operation. As both timelines became visible and even measurable, the Cabal truly began to panic. They intensified their operation, accelerated their own dystopian timeline, and began to disregard even the last few rules they had previously played by. Their power was greatly diminished, but they too had aces up their sleeves. A war within a war began. A script within a show, within a movie. More confusion, more chaos, more panic, and more truth. This too was anticipated by the initiators, and they knew it had to be experienced by all nonetheless. It could not be avoided. The people could not be spared unless they themselves took charge and changed it. The operation was conducted in a way that every linear approach to figure it out would have to lead to a dead end. The multi-dimensionality and the layered approach made it nearly impossible to counter-infiltrate and alter it. The plan had no end date, no final solution, no reachable goal. It needed to lead to one inevitable outcome though. For better or worse, the people had to regain control. The people had to stand up. The people had to forge their own future once again. They had to reach a point where they could see the timelines, the dystopian, dark, controlled one, and the free, empowered, and harmonious one. And then they had to choose. This is where we're at right now. This is where we stand. As the grandest operation of all time is unfolding, as generals, agents, lightworkers, prayer and healer warriors, peacekeepers, sleepers, and all others are working tirelessly behind the scenes and out in the open, mankind must make a choice. It cannot be decided for them. This is the moment. Which timeline will you choose? It's up to you.